So our theme tonight is called Relaxing Your Core. And it has to do with our tendency to really, let's say, just kind of contract inward, especially when we are having stressful periods in our lives, or we've been through a trauma, illness, things like that can make us start to contract inwardly. We have different lines of fascia in the body, and most of you have heard me talk about these different lines of fascia before. Oh, Katrina has a visitor, so cute. Joan, you're just joining us. I forgot to tell you guys you need a strap and balls tonight. Do you have those nearby? You're good, okay. So we have these different lines of fascia in our bodies called myofascial meridians. And the one we're focusing on tonight is called the core sheath. And the core sheath of fascia starts in our inner foot. So the inner arch of our foot goes all the way up our leg to the inner thigh. And then the inner thigh fascia ties into our pelvic floor. And in yoga, we sort of refer to the pelvic floor as being the floor of our core. And then from the pelvic floor, it starts to go up into our lower abdomen, into our transverse abdominis, ties into our psoas, diaphragm, and then our heart, like the pericardium is part of that fascia, up into our neck, our jaw, and our throat, and our tongue. So we can think of this as the inner central channel of the body, all the way from the inner feet, all the way up. And it tends to get grippy, graspy, tight, especially if we have weakness on the outer parts, right? So if our outer hips are weak, last week we talked about our obliques. If our obliques are weak, sometimes we can get that clenching in the internal part of our fascia. It's sort of compensating for instability in the outer body. But it also can just like you feel wound up sometimes, right? You're just so stressed, you're like a bundle of nerves or that kind of thing. And then we can get restriction. We can get restriction in the pelvic floor. And I'm seeing a lot of that in my private clients. I think out of my private clientele, at least 3 women have pelvic floor dysfunction and are seeing pelvic PT. So it's like super common right now that I'm seeing a lot of people with clenching, tightness in their pelvic floor, which can make some things uncomfortable, right? So we don't want to have clenching there. And that can lead up to clenching in our diaphragm. And I sent you guys a little graphic. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at that. There's a relationship between our pelvic floor and then the respiratory diaphragm. And ideally, they're moving together, right? So as our respiratory diaphragm moves down, the pelvic floor sort of opens. And then as our respiratory diaphragm moves up, there's like this flow. And some people call it like a jellyfish going up and down. Some people think of it like a flower opening and closing. So we want to be able to have strength when we need it, but we also need to be able to relax when we need to. And the pelvic floor is one of these places that we think if it's tight, if it's weak, if we're losing control of our pelvic floor, having incontinence and things like that, that we need to Kegel like crazy. And most of what I've learned through, working with some of my clients and like talking to them about what they're doing in pelvic PT, I've taken a couple courses, read a few books about it. It's not necessarily the case that we need to Kegel up. Because if we have a muscle that's clenching and tight, over time, that muscle becomes super fatigued, and then we can't engage it anymore. We lose control of it. So I always use the example, like if I were holding a yoga block in my hand, it would feel really light for the first minute. But then after 5 minutes, it starts to feel heavy. If I were holding on to that all day, it would be excruciating. And think about over the course of your lifetime, if you're holding on to that kind of tension, then the muscle fatigues and we lose control of our pelvic floor. So we want to learn to be able to relax it and engage it as we need to. So we're going to work with a lot of inner thigh stuff today. because that inner thigh fascia is connected into our pelvic floor. So we'll be doing a lot of releasing and stretching in that area. We'll also open up the lower abdomen in some of the work that we're going to do. And we're going to do a couple standing poses as well. So I'm going to head back and we're going to get started in our first pose. All right. And if you have any questions at the end, we can certainly chat for a little bit. So we're going to take, if you have 2 blankets. If you don't have 2 blankets, you can use a bolster or 2 pillows. But we're going to try to make a blanket burrito. So we're going to take 1 blanket and open it up so that, like we say off the pile, we're going to do open it up 1 time. And then we're going to roll it up from the long edge. Okay, and again, if you don't have the blankets, you can use a bolster or pillows instead. We're going to take our second blanket, if you've got 2, and open it up, just like we did with the first one. And then you're going to put that one inside, and you're going to roll it up again. So we make a little blanket burrito. So you have a really thick roll. Now, I'm just going to also say that some people are not going to want this thick of a roll, so you could do it with 1 blanket. If that's all you have tonight, roll up 1 blanket and try it with 1. And you'll see in a moment what we're going to do. So don't feel like you have to have the double blanket. Again, you can use a bed pillow, maybe fold it in half. You can roll it up and tie it with your belt. So you got to get creative with some of these props. Now, we're going to have this behind us. Now, I'm going to say people who have lower back stuff going on, you might want to do the single roll because sometimes it's a little cranky on the lower back for this one. Some of you might also want something for your head. So if you have a pillow or a 3rd blanket, you could put something up here for your head. You may not need it. So I'm just giving you guys some options. We're going to recline back over this blanket roll. Okay, so I like to kind of smush the end so that it gets a little lower. So smush the end down and then kind of lengthen your lower back. And you're going to come back. And if you're like, no way, this is not happy for my lower back, then make it a single blanket and try it like that, okay? And then if you can, you're going to do bound angle legs again. We did this last time. And then arms are just palms up at your side, maybe tuck your shoulder blades down your back a bit. Okay, if you want, you could also do your blocks underneath your knees for some support here. So it brings us into a little bit of a back bend here. And it opens up the lower abdomen. And it also helps us drape over this roll. So we can already see how this is opening up the central channel of the body. Now, while we're here, just take a few moments to get settled. Come into your breathing. I'm going to be sitting up, so it's easier for me to guide you through, so that everyone's in position. So please always listen to your body. If anything is too much, make an adjustment so that you feel comfortable and pain-free. Don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. Starting to have a sense of your breath as we've been working on these 6 weeks, breathing into the lower abdomen below your navel. And having a sense that as you inhale, your diaphragm is kind of going down toward the pelvic floor, and that increases the pressure in your belly and your pelvic floor. And then as you exhale, that diaphragm returns back up towards your rib cage, and the pelvic floor kind of goes back, right? So as you inhale, you might be able to feel this connection between our respiratory diaphragm and our pelvic diaphragm. We have a pelvic diaphragm as well as a respiratory diaphragm. And ideally, they're working together in synchronization. If we are kind of disconnected from this part of our body, or we're experiencing that kind of clenching, tightness in our central channel, we may not be able to feel the diaphragm moving, and we may not feel the connection all the way down into our pelvic floor. So just do your best to see what you can sense, and let your body kind of soften over the roll. So we tend to, when we're under stress and experience things like a traumatic event in our lives, unknowingly, our body starts to create this invisible armor, right? We can't see it, but we certainly can feel it. And the tension creates, blockages in our tissues, prevents that flow of prana that we always talk about. But as we lay over the roll here, we can think about just softly opening from the inside out. So think about softening from the inside out. Might use a visual of something like a flower, just like letting the petals open, allowing the petals to softly open. And we're going to take just a few more breaths here like this. Okay, from here, we're going to take the arms overhead and see if you could grab onto opposite elbows. So we create a little bit more lengthening. And those arms could kind of hang right over the edge of the blanket. If it's strenuous for you, you can always let those arms stay down. Lengthen through your elbows, and then take a couple more breaths again into that lower abdominal area. That awareness to the central core, the central channel of your being. Let's take one more breath here. And then we'll slowly let those arms release. Draw your knees up and then carefully roll off to your side. And we'll take those blankets, just set them off to the side somewhere. We don't need them for a while. And we're going to come back down onto your back and have your strap. Now, if you like something under your head, feel free to have a blanket under your head. Now, initially, we don't need any loop in the strap. So if you have a loop in the strap, let's take it out. We are going to put it back in though later. So for now, a strap without a loop. And we're going to bring the right knee into the chest and take the strap around your foot. Excuse me, and extend that leg up towards straight. If it's comfortable for you, you might extend your other leg. And then we'll flex both feet. Spread out through your toes. And some of you have done this with me before. We're going to do foot flossing, I call it. And it's basically kind of waking up the plantar fascia. And as I mentioned, this core sheath starts at the inner arch of your foot. So what you're going to do is slide your strap up and down your foot. So go side to side and slide it up and down. You can keep your shoulders relaxed, but maybe walk your hands up a little closer to your foot so your arms are straight if that feels okay. And now you can go a little faster and go up and down your foot like you're just giving yourself a little foot exfoliation with your strap. And notice how it warms up and softens the fascia of your foot. We'll go up and down a few times. And feel the warmth of that strap friction on your foot. All right, go ahead, release and just hug that knee back in. And then extend your leg and take a pause. And I just like to feel that right foot now compared to the left. So there's just more sense of blood flow, energy flow, maybe some tingling in that foot. And let's go ahead and do that on the other side. So we'll take the strap around your other foot, extend your leg up towards straight. We'll flex both feet. So if the foot is flexed, you'll have a better surface to floss and then go up and down the foot. So it's very interesting that these lines of fascia in the body. So sometimes we might have, something going on in one area of the body and then something going on in another area of the body. And if we look at these lines of fascia, sometimes we'll find out that there is a relationship between them. So sometimes you've got maybe some tightness in your foot, and that might relate to tightness in your inner thigh, or that tightness in your pelvic floor. So let's go a little faster, up and down, a couple more rounds. Try to get the whole surface of your foot from heel to the ball of your foot. Don't go to your toes or it's just gonna fall off. Okay, and now release. And let that leg slide out. Okay, so now both those feet are nice and tingly, got lots of blood flow in there. We're gonna take the strap now and make the loop. So if you're not used to making loops, you go through two of the little, if you've got a buckle on yours, go through both buckles, and then you go over the one and under the other, over, under. And we're gonna have a pretty big loop in the strap. So if you don't have a really big strap, you might have to do this differently. But those of you who can, if you have like an 8-foot strap or bigger, that's the really ideal. If you have a very short strap, you're not gonna put it around your back. But those of you who can, who have a longer strap, take your strap around your back. And we're gonna have the strap like high up in your back ribs, close to your armpit. And then we're taking that right leg back up into the strap. And we're gonna tighten the strap. So ideally your tail is coming down toward the floor because it's easy to pull on it and make it as tight as you want it to be. Okay, don't make it too tight though. We're gonna need to open the leg out to the side. So we're gonna take the leg up with you. I have it on my right leg. Left leg, we're gonna take into bound angle. So open that left knee out to the side. And if you want, you could put a block under it. Okay, if you're okay without, I'm okay if you just leave it be. And then we're gonna flex the right foot. And we're gonna start to open the leg out to the side. Now here's the key. We don't want that strap digging into the chest breast tissue. So make sure your strap is below your chest tissue and open your leg as far as you like. Resist your left rib cage more to the floor. So don't roll your rib cage with your leg. So just take the leg to the side and you might need to hold that strap so it stays away from the breast tissue. Keep the foot flexed and then start to push your foot into the strap. Try to have a little micro bend in your knee. We're not jamming that knee joint. And then maybe you just let your arms relax and hold it here, just kind of chill for a few breaths. And we're working that line of fascia that goes from your inner foot up to your inner thigh, your adductor, and then into your pelvic floor. Once you have your position, you may need to hold the strap, you might be able to relax your arms, come back to that low belly breath. And see if you could feel that sensation as the diaphragm is descending. It makes room for your breath to come into your lungs, and it makes the pressure increase in your low belly and your pelvic floor. So if we are someone who reverse breathes, doesn't, do a diaphragmatic breath throughout the day, you're holding your breath, or your chest breathing, your diaphragm is not doing the up and down as it should, and then the pelvic floor doesn't get the stimulation of the pelvic diaphragm moving up and down, and then we start to get dysfunction. So we want to always practice good breathing because it's so good for our whole body. It's good for our heart, it's good for our pelvic floor, it's good for our stress levels, our digestion, so many things. All right, let's slowly bring that leg back up and we're going to release, and we'll take the other leg right up into the strap. Okay, and then the right leg is going to come into our bound angle. So we're opening both inner thighs here. Flex the foot and start to let that leg drop open to the side. Again, adjust your strap so it's below your breast tissue. And then resist your right rib cage back toward the floor. So we don't want to let that right rib cage pop up or the right shoulder pop up. Keep those guys grounded. And then see if you could maybe let your arms relax. Push your foot into the strap a bit. And again, feel that line of energy from your inner foot up your inner thigh into your pelvic floor. And then we'll come into our breath. Send your breath below your navel. See if you could think about that breath being as close down toward your pubic bone as you can. So with your awareness, think about the breath going all the way down. See if you might soften through your face and your jaw. So a lot of times when we have tension in this central channel, it creeps up into our jaw. We might have things like TMJ or clenching in our jaw. Let's hold it here for 2 more breaths. Conscious breathing. After that second breath, we're going to go ahead and bring that leg slowly up and then release. Take your strap off of around your back and stay here. We're going to take both legs up now and put both feet in the strap. I always have these flowy pants on. Not a good thing when you're taking your legs up in the air. Flex both feet, and now we're coming into a straddle, so both legs are going wide. Now here you can adjust your strap and make it as big as you want, and the strap can hold your feet, so you could let your arms relax. You could also hold on to the strap. You could hold on to both parts of the strap or the bottom strap. See what feels better in your body. Try to keep your spine nice and neutral here. So when our spine is neutral, we have better pelvic floor functioning. For many of us, we have, excessive pelvic tilt. And when we do, we can get tight. So if our pelvis is tipped one way or the other, sometimes it'll tighten the front of our pelvic floor or the back of our pelvic floor. So if our spine is in neutral, we can get the best opportunity to let the pelvic floor be relaxed. Hold it here. You can go as wide as it feels good for you. If you want to go even wider, let your strap get a little bigger. You'll increase that lengthening of the inner thigh area. Find your conscious breath in the low belly. One more cycle here. And then slowly go ahead and bring those legs up, release your strap, and we'll hug the knees into the chest. Let's go ahead, just maybe do a little rocking, a little circling on your lower back. And then we'll roll to the side and come on up and let's come into a seated position. Okay. So we're coming into bound angle, soles of the feet together. Hold on wherever you can, ankles, shins, and kind of roll your sit bones a little forward so you feel like you're on the top of your sit bones. And then just hold here for a couple of breaths. Not coming into a forward fold just now. See if you can have a sense of what the pelvic floor is doing here. So you might kind of widen out those sit bones a little bit. See if you can create a little more evenness. One more breath. Okay, from here, we're gonna bring our right foot flat and we're gonna lean over towards your left sit bone. And we're gonna bring the right arm on the inside of the right leg, okay? Now we're gonna press the arm and the leg into each other on that right side and start to turn towards your left. Now keep that pressing of the arm and leg into each other, press in your foot. And just again, notice that inseam of the leg. Let's hold here 2 more breaths. So create a little wall of resistance with the arm and the leg pressing into each other. All right, and release. And we'll do that on the other side. So we'll bring that right leg out to the side, left foot flat, bring the left arm on the inside of the leg, and then we're pressing the arm and leg into each other as you turn over towards your right. And then keep that pressure of arm and leg, press through your foot, and breathe. One more breath here. And then release, and we'll come back to the center, bring those soles of the feet together. Again, sit up tall, widen out the sit bones, try to get as even as you can through your pelvic floor. And we'll breathe in the center. Let's do 2 more. All right, so we'll go ahead and draw the knees up with your hands and we'll come around into our tabletop and do cat-cows. So we always do our 5 rounds of cat-cow. So when you're ready, hands under shoulders, knees under hips, and think about the pelvic floor as you're doing this. And every time we inhale, we're getting a little stretch through the lower abdominals. We exhale and round. Keep that going. You might even think about initiating the movement from your pelvis, your hips, your pelvic floor. So as I inhale, my pelvic floor is kind of moving back and up. And as I exhale, the pelvic floor is moving forward. Really stay focused on that central channel and notice if you wobble a lot. See if you can control the wobbling and really be on that midline as you go through your cat-cows. And after your 5 rounds, move back to a nice wide leg child's pose. And arms might reach forward or you might stack your palms under your forehead. In your child's pose, think about lengthening your sit bones, your pelvic floor, your tailbone behind you as the arms and head are reaching forward if your arms are straight. So we create that length in that central channel. Okay, so from here, go ahead and we're gonna take if you have a blanket on your mat, we're gonna take it off. I always start with a blanket on my mat because I have like a hard tile floor here. So I like to have that extra cushioning. You guys don't always have to do that. But you might wanna have something under your knees because we're gonna come into puppy pose next. Okay, so blanket or not, back to tabletop. And in puppy pose, we keep our hips kind of over the knees. We're not moving back like child's pose. And then pause with your hands just a little forward, not coming into it just yet. And then lift your sit bones a little bit. So it's a little bit of a pelvic tilt. Then let's walk those hands forward. Now, some of you, this might be a lot on your shoulders. So you could hold the edges of your mat and pull forward. That gives you a little more stability. If your head doesn't make it to the floor, you could also put a block under your head. Okay. And then in these poses like puppy and down dog, child's pose, we're lengthening through that central channel. We're lengthening through the pelvic floor, and we're trying to find that breath along that central channel, and especially into the belly and pelvic floor. All right, go ahead and walk yourself back into tabletop. We'll take the blanket out if you have a blanket under your knees, and we'll get ready for a down dog. So from table, let's take the hands a little forward of the shoulders, turn the fingers out a hair, tuck the toes under, and lift up into your dog. Now, just like we did in puppy pose, we're gonna roll those sit bones up. Let's stay with the heels high in this dog. So we get a little tip of our pelvis. Let your sit bones roll up. And then as you push forward with your hands, think about your pelvic floor drawing back away from the crown of the head. Take a couple breaths here. Breathing into the lower belly and the pelvic floor. So I'm going to sound like a broken record tonight, but that's our focus. So we want to learn to breathe into the pelvic floor. One more. And then bring the knees down, and we'll come back into child's pose. All right, back to your down dog, and we're going to simply walk the feet forward with a little bend in your knees. Bring your hands to your hips, push in your feet, and we'll come all the way up to stand. Oh, I just realized my camera is going to be I'm going to have to adjust a little bit. Okay. We're going to grab one blanket. Fold it in half so it looks like it came off the pile, and just set that to the side. We'll use that in a bit. Okay, we're just going to do a couple of half sun salutations, get the hamstrings warmed up a little bit more. So come into a nice mountain pose. Lengthen up nice and tall, and let's get a sense of a neutral pelvis. So notice if like you tend to spill your pelvis a little forward. So I'm going to stand sideways. You spill your pelvis forward, your booty will stick out a bit. Some of us do the opposite. And we have posterior tilt, a little less common. Then we feel tightness down in our sit bone area. See if you could feel like your pelvis is more level. So the tailbone is lengthening down and the abdomen feels like it's more lifting up. Okay, so see if you can keep that and let's reach the arms overhead. Interlace your palms and press your palms up. And then from this place of neutral pelvis, let's take a couple breaths. It's 2 more rounds. Ground through your feet. See if you could lift your arms a little higher, creating a little more space in your side body. And then release your hands, take a little bend in your knees and fold forward over your legs. Come into a halfway lift, hands on your thighs. Exhale, fold. Inhale all the way up. And exhale, hands to your heart. Let's do 2 more rounds, nice and slow. Inhale, reach. Exhale, fold. That little bend, halfway lift. I like to bring hands all the way up on the thighs so I can lift my shoulders and bring my chest parallel to the ground. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach up. Now this next time, hands to heart, we're going to pause in that halfway up shape. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, fold. Come into your halfway lift and let's stay there for a moment. So think about here, your pelvic floor drawing back, sit bones drawing back, crown of the head forward. And then notice if you dip in your lower back, so you might need some tone in your lower belly so you don't use your lower back muscles so much. And let's take 3 breaths here. Strengthening the back, but we're also creating that length from the pelvic floor to the crown of the head. On your next exhale, fold forward. And then inhale all the way up. And hands to your heart. Good. Okay, grab that blanket that we got ready. And we're going to be tucking that blanket right into the hip creases. We're going to take the feet a little wider so they're not like narrow for Tadasana and have a little bit more stability. And we're going to take the top edge of the blanket and roll it over about 1 inch or 2. Okay, and we're going to have it below your navel. Think about your navel lifting up over the blanket. So like you're going to take a leap. Lift your belly up and then bend your knees. And you're going to tuck that blanket into your hip creases and come into a forward fold. Now, if you can't get hands to the floor, grab your blocks. You can use your blocks here, or you can hold on to opposite elbows. And you're going to feel a little pressure in your belly. So the blanket is like massaging the area of your hip flexors, your psoas, your low belly. You can try to breathe through that pressure as best you can. So let's see if we can take about 3 more breaths with that blanket rolling. It also deepens our hip creases. Let your sit bones tip up, lengthening your lower back, lengthening through your pelvic floor. And then you're going to slowly bend those knees, press into your feet, come all the way up, set that blanket off to the side, and then just take a couple of breaths. Okay, so we're going to do triangle pose tonight. Some of you might like to have a block. You can also, put your hand on the shin if you like, but you want to have blocks, let's put them one to the back of the mat on either side, and we'll step out the feet wide. So 3.5 feet or so. And just start with your hands on your hips, open across your collarbones. And then let's go ahead, turn your right leg out so your toes point to the short edge of your mat. And then we're going to turn the left toes in and widen the back heel a little bit. So if you don't feel stable, you can go a little bit shorter, just adjust so you feel very stable. And then the front leg we're going to have straight, but we're going to be really mindful of that knee. Again, don't jam the knee. Push your foot down into the floor, and then I call this the squeegee action. So if you guys know this cue. So your front foot, your right foot, we want to squeegee it towards your pinky toe side. And that helps to externally rotate your leg a little bit, helps firm the outer hip in, and helps get everything aligned in here. Then we're deepening into the front hip crease. So you might put your fingers there in your hip crease and draw in as you tip your pelvis, and then bring your hand down to your block, or if you want to place it on your shin. Keep your top hand on your hip here initially. Spread your toes. We don't want to grip with our toes. If we're grippers in our feet, chances are we're grippers in our pelvic floor. Top hip. You're going to let it roll forward and almost like look down towards your right foot. So the top hip, we want to let it come a little forward to help protect the lower back and the SI joints. But there's a twist here in our triangle pose. So bottom rib cage rather, take your left hand to your bottom ribs and lengthen them away from your hip. So you're trying to lengthen these bottom side ribs. Then get a handful of those ribs and draw them forward. So you're getting a twist. Okay, then slide your hand to your top ribs and take your top ribs and draw them back, and you're getting that nice twist through your belly. Your top hip is still a little going forward, okay? Then take your top arm, reach it up. Root into your feet, and then think about turning your rib cage as if you're gonna turn your belly toward the ceiling. And we get a nice twist. Root down, especially into your heels, and let your inner thighs hug towards each other, creating stability. Hold it here, another breath. So anytime we do a little twist, that can help release tension in the core of our body. We're gonna take that top arm now and reach it over your ear. And you might need to lower your block at this point. So I can lower my block. My hips are drawing a little bit toward my back foot. And now I'm gonna reach more through the top arm. And this is a variation of triangle. We're gonna take our top ribs and make a bow. Pop your top ribs up like you're making a rainbow with your body, and let your top arm drape over your ear. So we unstick this area of the hip flexor and the psoas. If that's too deep for you, don't do the bow. Just stick with your arm over your ear. Press the floor away with your feet. And then top hand back to the hip. Bend into your right knee. Press in your feet and come back up to a warrior two now. Good, straighten your leg, parallel your feet, and let's step it back in and give a good shake. Good. Okay, let's try that on the other side. So that's a really deep version of triangle. Listen to your body. If any of this is not right for you, do what you can, right? Do the first version and don't go into that second version. Step the feet apart again. We'll do our other side. Okay, turning that left leg out. Right toes in, widen your heel. Deepen that front hip crease. Hand to the block or your shin. And then top hand on the hip. We're gonna let that top hip roll forward. So it gives a little more space in our SI joint and lower back. Then we're gonna lengthen those bottom ribs using our hand and then pull those bottom ribs forward into a twist. Top hand to the top ribs and take the top ribs and roll them back, turning your navel more toward the ceiling. It's really facing forward, but you're going in that direction. And then top arm can reach up. Another thing that's really common here is the bottom shoulder rolling forward. So take that bottom shoulder, roll it back into external rotation. Press into your feet, inner thighs magnetize. We're squeegeing that front foot toward the pinky toe. And then from here, top arm reaches over the ear. Maybe you'll lower your block. Hips are drawing towards your back foot. You can stay here or go for that bowing action. We're gonna pop those top ribs up and get a little bit more stretch. We open the rib cage. And as that arm starts to drape toward the floor, I get a nice stretch here into this hip. Press the floor away with your feet and your hand on the block. One more breath. Top hand back to the hip. Bend into your front knee and press in your feet. Carefully come back up into a warrior two and straighten that leg. Step it back in, shake it out. Okay, we're gonna do one more standing pose and we're coming back down to the ground. So this is a wide leg downward facing dog. So we're gonna come back into the wide leg position. Turn your feet so they're parallel or perhaps a little pigeon toed. So you might go just a tiny bit turning those toes in. And then we're gonna bend the knees, hinge from your hips, and bring your hands to the floor. If it's hard to reach the floor, you might bring in some blocks. Pause here, and we'll do that little bit of that pelvic tilt like we did in our puppy and our dog. And think about widening your pelvic floor, widening your sit bones, open up that central channel. Then from here, walk your hands forward like down dog. And turn your palms slightly externally into the floor like that squeegee action. Let your head come between your arms. Keep that feeling of lifting up and widening your sit bones. And then breathe here along that central channel. Breathe into your pelvic floor. Think about lengthening through your pelvic floor. Go ahead and take 2 more breaths. After your second breath, start to walk your hands back in under your shoulders. Heel toe your feet in a little bit. And then bend your knees, hands to your hips. Come all the way up to stand. Very good. All right, let's go ahead and come back down to the floor. Fix my mat. And we're gonna sit on something. I have a square pillow. If you don't have a square pillow, you can use a blanket. And I'm gonna put the point in the middle of my mat. And we're gonna sit with the point in the middle. So I'm gonna grab a quick drink. So maybe you have a blanket square, maybe you have a folded blanket or a pillow. We're gonna sit on that and come into a wide leg position. So again, the same opening of the inseam of the legs, so the pelvic floor. Try to be on the tops of your sit bones. Point your toes and your kneecaps up. And then press your thighs down into the ground. So it's very active. Okay, from here, we're gonna interlace our hands behind our back, or you can hold opposite elbows, or you could do a fist bump. But the idea is we wanna get our shoulders back. So whatever version works for you, widen the collarbones, open the chest. press your thighs down, take an inhale, and then exhale, start to hinge forward, keeping those shoulders back. Now just come to about where it feels like you're getting a little stretch. Keep pressing those thighs down. Keep drawing your shoulders back. And imagine you could grow your legs longer. Reach through the legs. Now bring your hands onto the floor in front of you. Some of you might be able to start to come forward a little more, but make sure we're bending from the hips here, not at the waist. So we're hinging at the hip joint. As you start to come forward, think about that same pelvic tilt. So we're tipping the pelvis toward the front and those sit bones draw back behind you. That'll facilitate a forward fold. Try to keep that spine neutral and not have like a big rounding in your upper back. Wherever you landed, let's take about 2 or 3 more breaths. All right, let's slowly start to come up. Take your time and pause when you get vertical. Take a moment. Okay, so we'll use our hands, lift those knees and bring the legs back in. And then go ahead and come off of the prop. All right, so we're gonna move into a supported bridge. There's a lot of different ways we can do this. So depending on what props you have, will depend on how you set this up. So I have 2 bolsters. And I know most of you guys don't have 2 bolsters, so don't worry about that. You don't have to. But if you have 2 bolsters, that makes it easier. If you have 1 bolster, you're gonna put the first bolster toward the top of your mat. And then you can make a second bolster out of bed pillows. If you don't have a bolster, you can use bed pillows. If you have 4 bed pillows, I would say stack 2, and that'll make it closer to a bolster. You can also stack up blankets and blocks. Okay, so I'm gonna show that because I know everyone has that. So you might take, some blocks and stack them up and then put a blanket on top, and it'll be similar to a bolster. Okay, and you'll put your legs up on this one. If you've got the pillows, I think that would be more ideal, or the bolsters. But again, use what you have at home, no worries. Okay, so I'm gonna put the bolsters head to head. And then some of you might need something to put your head on up at the end. So maybe a folded blanket or a pillow there. If you like to strap your legs in for supported bridge, you can have your strap. And if you're not sure, just keep your strap nearby. And you want to have a loop in the strap that's going to go around your thighs. So you might make that loop a little smaller than what we had in the beginning. Supported bridge really opens up the front body, opens up the abdomen, the diaphragm area, the psoas. So we're going to hit a lot of good stuff. Okay. When you're ready, we're going to be reclining back on these props. If you're really tall, you might even need like blocks at the end here for your feet. I'm short, so I probably won't need it. So I'm going to come onto the bottom bolster and start to recline back. But then see if you could shift yourself so that you start to, so it depends on your body length. Your head is going to come all the way to the floor. And here's a couple of options, right? So sometimes it feels nice to have your shoulders kind of hanging off the edge. And then you'll feel like a little bit more stretch here. Some people like to go all the way back until their shoulders are on the floor, and then you get more stretch to your chest. Your legs are going to go up onto the props. Okay, so it's a back bend here in the upper body. If you want, you can put your strap around your thighs, and it helps give you a little bit more secure feeling. So you'll put that strap around your thighs and tighten it up. That's optional. If it feels too fussy, then maybe you want to skip it and just put a blanket over your abdomen. That might feel nice. And then turn your palms up, tuck your shoulders under, and we'll breathe here. So in your lower body, we're pretty neutral. You know, our pelvis is neutral. The back bend is more in our upper body here. So let's see if we can find that breath into the lower belly and into the pelvic floor. I'm going to come up and just kind of check in on you guys. And I'll have a little reading for you in a moment. I'm going to have you guys hold this for a couple of minutes. So make sure you're comfortable. Yeah, looks good from those of you that I can see. Nice. So stick with that breathing as best you can. Try not to check out. So the reading is called Lay the Armor Down. I thought this was really very much related to what we're talking about tonight. Lay the armor down. Arriving back from the fields of battle, bruised and bolder, we are beholden to no one now. Losing or winning, the reasons for the war fade quickly into memory. We've forgotten that these suits of armor are not our second skins. Smiling, we set aside the shields and swords, remove the face masks, begin to peel away the layers of weight and protection. When finally we cast our armor to the ground, it feels as if our bodies grow and straighten, swell and lengthen upward toward the sun. We run light and unencumbered and stretch the stiffness from our joints. Rolling on the grass, we laugh as awkward limbs remember freedom. When at last we return to where we started, without a second glance, we know that we've outgrown the suits of armor. We won't fit inside those too tight shells again. Why would we even try? Well, let's take about 1 more minute here. That sensation of softening from the inside out. Letting any of that deeply held tension melt away. All right. So that was your last minute there. When you're ready, we're going to slowly start to bend the knees. You could slide your strap off. Take your time. And if it would feel good, maybe you want to bring the knees into the chest, a little stretch for the lower back. If you want, you just come right over to your side, roll off to your side, and we'll come up back into a seated posture. I'm just going to do a little jaw work before we come into Shavasana. So as I mentioned before, sometimes when we have tension in our central channel, we can get things like TMJ, teeth grinding. We just feel really tensed and clenched in our jaw. So we're gonna just sit up on whatever feels comfortable for you. If you wanna sit up on a prop and get those sit bones widened. And we're gonna take our hands and place them on the sides of our cheeks. So I learned this in a cranial sacral workshop that I went to. It's a little gentle jaw release. So I want you to imagine that your hands are just super light on your skin, like the weight of a dime. So just a slight pressure, but real gentle. And then let your hands kind of hang down, like you're pulling your flesh down on the sides of your jaw. And then close your eyes, and well, if you want, you can always find a soft focal point, but maybe close your eyes and come into your breathing. And imagine the warmth of your hands could soften any tension in your jaw. And that little bit of weight of your fingers is pulling downward. Let your fingers slowly slide down a little bit towards your lower jaw. And continue that feeling of the hands hanging off your jaw. That little bit of weight. Letting the fingers very slowly slide down. Eventually the fingers are at the lower part of the jaw. And then go ahead and let the fingers go. Let your hands rest. Just take a breath there. All right. So now we're going to grab our one tennis ball. And we're going to do a little myofascial work on the jaw. You're going to need a block. Put your block on your mat and put your tennis ball on top. And we're going to be on our side, and we're going to be using the tennis ball to massage the jaw. So I'm going to come up close for a moment. And so you're going to first lay your head on the ball on the block, and you're going to kind of move around. You can open and close your jaw, move your jaw around, and you're going to be massaging this area. Then we're going to take it to the behind the ear spot and go a little bit up and down the back of the ear into the neck. Okay, so let's start with the jaw. So the ball on top of your block, you'll lay on your side and let your head, actually I like to turn the block the tall way because then it's not in my way. And just kind of let your weight, you're in control how much weight you put into it. If you prop yourself up, you'll have less weight. And then sort of roll around. And if you've got something like TMJ, this might be good to do, on a regular basis. You might roll around, you might pause and like open and close your jaw. Or wiggle your jaw. You want to get kind of upper cheekbone back towards your ear, lower jaw region. I could do this one all day, so we won't stay here too long. So I get you guys into Shavasana soon. And when you're ready, move it to behind your ear. And you'll be surprised how much tension you have back there. And then kind of roll up and down behind your ear into the neck as it connects into the back of the ear. You might roll up and down, right and left. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. So you can just turn over your other side. I'm going to stay facing forward. So start with the area of the jaw and the cheekbones. Get right in front of the ear, maybe even up toward the temple a bit. Now, whenever you're ready, you just switch to behind the ear. All right, go ahead and set those props off to the side. Come on up, and you're gonna set up for Shavasana. If you feel like you need any like knee hug, happy baby, feel free to take a moment to do what you need to do. And then we'll set up in Shavasana. You can set up however you like, but maybe you wanna try that blanket roll again. And this time, just keep it a little milder. So maybe if you did 2 in the beginning, do 1 blanket roll now. And again, maybe you want to have a pillow for your head. Maybe you want to do legs straight this time with something under your knees. So maybe a pillow or bolster under your knees. Or if you feel like bound angle again, that's an option. It does give you a little bit more access to breathing in the pelvic floor. Make sure you scoot your tailbone a little forward so we're not tucked under, and then recline back. And if this is not a nice place for you for Shavasana, feel free to be flat. But it just facilitates this opening from the inside out. And I'm going to come up so I can guide you in a moment and give you guys a couple minutes to decide how you're most comfortable. So as we usually do, I'm going to be guiding you through a meditation. We're going to start with some pelvic floor work and then go into relaxation. So establish your belly breath. And simply now just inhale into the belly. Imagine the pelvic floor opening as you inhale. And then just relaxing as you exhale. And we're going to eventually add in a conscious contraction. So most of the practice was focused on releasing pelvic floor tonight. But as I mentioned earlier, we do need both that contraction and releasing. And if we do a conscious contraction, it might enable us to do more of a conscious releasing. So let me just kind of give you a visual, and then we'll give it a try. So we have a front, middle, and back of our pelvic floor. What we want to think about is taking that inhale on the pelvic floor kind of expands. And as you exhale, we're going to consciously contract the front and back toward the middle. And imagine you're picking up a blueberry with your pelvic floor. I know it sounds funny. And you're trying to lift that blueberry up towards your navel, maybe towards your chest. Draw it up as high as you can. And then a conscious relaxing. So don't just let it all flop open. Consciously release the pelvic floor and the imaginary blueberry. Okay, so let's try that again. We're going to inhale into the belly, diaphragm moves down, pelvic floor opens like the flower, the jellyfish. And then exhale, pick up the blueberry. Front of the pelvic floor, back of the pelvic floor, draw toward the middle, lift it up toward your navel, maybe toward your chest. And then a conscious release, very slow. That's important. Now do a few more rounds like that. So we want control over the release as well as the contraction. And that control of the release helps our brain recognize the relaxation phase. So we use that a lot in the somatic work that I do. We want the brain to recognize the contrast between the engagement and the releasing. So we're going to take 2 more cycles. And if you can't quite get it all tonight, no worries, do what you can. It might take some practice. Okay. Now after you finish that last round, come back to a relaxed breath. Let go of the contracting of the pelvic floor and breathe. Now we're going to take our hands and place your hands on the area of your hip flexors. Place your hands on the area of your hip flexors and feel the warmth of your hands and imagine you could relax this area of your body by the warmth of your hands. Send your breath down low. All right, now place your hands on your lower belly below your navel. And again, breathe and relax. Feel the warmth of your hands and let your belly be soft. As we've talked about before, there are times for contracting, engaging, and strengthening. There are also times for releasing, dissolving, letting go. Now move your hands right below your rib cage. So your thumbs are kind of on the rib cage, your other fingers are sort of right below the rib cage, right in the center. And now we're at the area of your diaphragm. So feel the warmth of your hands and soften the area of your diaphragm. Let your hands be really light and soft here. And imagine the diaphragm like rose petals, so really soft on the edges. Very delicate. Let the breath be delicate here. And now place one hand on your heart and the other hand on top, right in the center. So more of heart center. Breathe into your hands, feel the warmth of your hands, and imagine it could soften any tension, clenching, armoring in your heart. Imagine you could soften the tissue around your heart, the pericardium sac. Often clenches around our heart when it wants to protect it. So let the heart know it's safe to unwind, relax, loosen any gripping. Now place your hands on the sides of your neck. Feeling the warmth of your hands, softening the sides of your neck. The breath again, feel just very subtle and delicate. And now moving to the sides of your jaw where we were before, gently place your hands. Not a lot of pressure, just real soft. Sense that the warmth of your hands could melt any tension in your jaw. And now let your hands come back down wherever you're comfortable, at your side or on your belly. Take a few more moments. Sensing this central channel of your body, almost like molten lava, just warm and soft and liquid. Let that feeling spread from the inside to the outside, out into the periphery, as if you could unravel from the inside out. Let that core of your being be soft. Relax your core. Imagine that you could breathe freely up and down that central channel. So we'll take a moment now and notice how you feel. We'll gently start to come back with some deeper breaths, some small movements. Try not to, jar your system. Stay really slow. Eventually, you can move a little more until you feel like you're ready to come onto your side. So you might want to do a little knee hug or a stretch. And have a pause on your side for a few breaths. You have a little transition before you come up to sit. Take your time, find a comfortable seat. Sitting up nice and tall. And we'll bring our palms together in front of our heart space. Take an inhale, and as you exhale, bow inward. Namaste. All right, thank you guys. Feel free to unmute if you have any questions.